Jason, good to see you.
Hey, Garth.
Excited about this pod, this piece we've been working on with trust. Love it. Hey, I've got a question for you, just to
Yeah,
preempt
let's
the
have it.
pod a little bit. If you could build a room with 3 people in it to help you in your role as a leader in your organization, who are 3 people you'd put in that room?
Great question. So I think the 3 people are these. I'd put my mom in the
They
room
could be alive
because
or
I think
dead.
yeah. Well, no, I'm just gonna go with people I know, Garth, because it's just easier. So I'm gonna go with 3 people I know. I'd go with my mom because she would keep me really humble and on track, and she's my mom, so I'd want her there. I'd go with a leader that I would have had, brought me up. So I'd say I'm not gonna say the last names, but Dave or Dennis. I would have them there because they just really helped me with my leadership. And I think I'd want an academic, so I'd have my doctoral supervisor, Dr. Barb Brown, join me because she just got a way of bringing the best out of everybody, and she knows more about educational research as of anybody. So I think that balance of people would be really, really fun to support me. That'd be the room I'd build. What about you, Garth? You asked a question. I want to know who's in your room.
Ooh, in my room, I would definitely have. I would have an author of fiction, a really strong author of fiction. Geraldine Brooks
Nice.
comes to mind, historical fiction author. She's amazing. I would have a comedian because I
Good one.
love
I
the
like
role
that.
that comedians play in what they do. They bring joy, they bring humor, but also like cutting insights into society and what's needed. And then I would have one of my buddies, one of my friends to keep me, as you said about your mom, keep me grounded, right? And never forgetting where I came from.
Man, great question. I mean,
Yeah.
that does lead nicely into this podcast. We talk about the room being the smartest person in the room, and we talk an awful lot about mentors in this episode. And I think that's a great opener, Garth. I think people are
Yeah,
going
and
to love this, and I hope.
we got some great questions from our listeners as well. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I hope this is a moment of thinking about what it means to have great mentors and how they can support you in your attempt to find purpose in your work.
Enjoy the episode.
Enjoy.
With Garth and Jason, we dive right in, breaking down Ted's world. Let's begin from AFC, Richmond's Field to your day to day. Lassoing leadership's here to stay. Keep leading the lasso way. Together we'll grow stronger every day. So plug in your headphones and let's start the show. With lessons from Ted, we'll learn and grow.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to Lassoing Leadership. I'm your host, Garth Nichols.
And I am Jason Rogers. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and I'm coming at you from my car right now. My son's playing in a hockey game. But
Super
today,
super sweet recording studio, Garth. You're looking
really
good. You're
is.
sounding great. I'm glad you can join us.
Thanks, man. Today we're wrapping up our exploration with empathy and trust. We had a great conversation with Belle and Tim, authors of Navigating Life. And what an amazing time this has been for us, Jason. Like talking about these 2 key features of leadership has been really energizing for me. And what about you?
And I've said it before, but it's like getting a shot of vitamin D and vitamin D at the same time. Tim and Belle were amazing guests. I felt like I could have spoken to them for hours, and the chance to talk with people with minds like theirs is just a real highlight on this podcast. I hope our listeners are enjoying it as well.
Yeah, and I totally agree. They really just eased right into the pod. They told stories about how they met each other and where their research has taken them. And yeah, we could have used way more time with them for sure. But I loved how they spoke with enthusiasm and yet calm. They spoke off the cuff, but backed it up with research. And I think their book, How to Navigate Life, was really brought to life for us.
Absolutely. Let's say it again, How to Navigate Life. I mean, get your copy on Audible, get it on Amazon. I've given away about 20 of these so far, and I'm going to keep giving them away because I do think it is an antidote to an awful lot of what we're facing in this world when it comes to, performance mindset and really leaning into the purpose mindset. I think there's some real magic in that text.
Yeah, you say antidote, I say playbook, actually, because there's
nice
so many things in there. So I think we would have loved to have, more time with them. But Jason, if you could ask them a question above and beyond the time we spend with them, what would it be? What is still lingering for you?
It alluded to it a second ago, but what lingers for me is that in society today, there's so much pressure to have that performance mindset. It is absolutely everywhere. And as much as we can learn about the purpose mindset, maybe that is the way to have a playbook around, the performance mindset. But ultimately, I would just like to lean in and hear a little bit more about how do we coach our kids and how early can we coach our kids to lean in on the purpose mindset, because I do think that that's what we're going to need in this next generation as things keep coming at us. So I want to know more performance versus purpose, and what do we do? What about you, Garth?
What keeps coming back for me is Ted's purpose. He always talking to his team about, I just want these kids, I just want these players to be their best selves on and off the pitch. So for me, I would have loved to have talked to Tim a little bit more, because he's in the schools. How does he build trust with his students? And not only trust, but he builds relationships that ends up building capacity and belief of the students in themselves. So I would have loved to have talked to him a little bit more about that.
Yeah, let's try to have them back, because I have some parenting questions of my own that I need to get off my chest, and I could use a professional consult, if you will. And if they'll do it
There
for
you
free
go.
on the pod, I'm all into it. Right? We don't have a sponsorship on this yet, but if we can get some free support, that might be the best we can do.
So listen, let's recap here. Jason, what was something that jumped out for you from our conversation with Belle and Tim?
For me, it's partially what's in the book and what's on the podcast, but more than anything, I really, from Belle and Tim, I take away the fact that having a good partner in thinking and in learning and in growth is really, really important. And you see Belle and Tim and the way they talk about each other, and the way they work with each other, and how they bring individual talents to their work struck me. And I really do think, like, whether it's in a team, whether it's in an organization, or whether it's in a partnership, like these two incredible intellects and authors, I think having good friends along for the ride does a lot to maximize our talents and skills. And so Belle and Tim are a great partnership. And Garth, while I got you here, it's just, this podcast's not the same without you, partner. So I do appreciate our partnership in all of this. And I really do trust you, Garth. And I think that's what it comes back to. What about for you? What do you like? I know that's off the pod, but what do you take away from your actual time in the pod?
Yeah, thanks, man. And I appreciate you too. And I think that there's an old proverb, I don't know who it's attributed to, but if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I love that.
Yeah.
And for me, what jumped out from that conversation, and where I really want to spend more time, is in the role of mentors play in your life. So in their book, they talk about how a purpose mindset is really ignited through conversations with mentors. Maybe that's what Tim is doing there, because they raise awareness, self-awareness in themselves and in others. And it's mentors who inspire students by exposing them to various and different lived experiences in ways that get them to explore intersections, right? Intersections with the needs of the world, because the purpose mindset is also, how do you make the world a better place? The role of mentors I don't think the human brain is built for reflection. Otherwise, we'd all be really good at it and spend more time on it. But it provides a space for deliberate rumination. It's intensive, it's reflective. It's that active contemplation, maybe like in the moment, maybe debriefing what had happened. And also, hey, before you go into this conversation, use a mentor to help you out. So I really appreciate that. And I think it's a great support for educators and parents in a sort of to find a partner, to find a group, get you to ask yourself questions, get you to debrief in a very safe and sort of productive way. Yeah, I love that.
Garth, you hit on something that's really important. And throughout this season of the podcast, I think mentors is probably the leading theme. And when I think about mentors, I'd put a leadership challenge out there to our listeners and say, I want you to think about who are your mentors. And I think the mentee part of the relationship is probably as important as a mentor relationship. The mentee, one, has to put in energy and trust into the mentor. They've got to, reach out on a regular basis. They've got to be vulnerable, all of those things. And so the leadership challenge that I come up with this week, Garth, is I want you to think about who are your 3 mentors in your leadership. And 2, as a mentee, what are you putting into that relationship that, brings fruit along the way. And if you can't list, your 3 top mentors, or you can't list the energy and efforts that you're putting into that relationship to sustain it, I think there's some work to be done. And I think we can all benefit from that. So there you go. Leadership challenge right off the top.
And leadership challenge accepted. All right, let's move on to listener questions. Is that cool? Can we do that?
That's cool. Let's get going.
Okay, our first one is from Barry Waynesboro, who reached out through LinkedIn. Love that. He's from SkillPod, where they're supporting soft skills for the digital age. Thanks, Barry, for this question. And he asks, how do you keep mentorship from becoming patronization? He asks, are not deep and meaningful relationships equal partnerships? Mentorship may imply a hierarchy, and is that built into a relationship? So, Jason, can you take a stab at this one?
Yeah, no, I think there's give and take in all mentor relationships. Like, I really think a good, trusting, vulnerable mentorship relationship gives something to both partners. I find that, I've got a few colleagues who I think look up to me as a mentor in leadership, but I have to tell you, I take away more from those conversations sometimes than I think they do in the reflection of my own practice, or perhaps a recounting of an experience or a learning that I've had. So I think, all good mentor-mentee relationships should be mutually beneficial. And I think, to Barry's point here, it's, we can't look at it as a hierarchy. I think there has to be implied relationship. There has to be trust. There has to be vulnerability. There's got to be safety in that relationship. So I think you're right, Barry. I don't think it's a hierarchical relationship, even though one person in that relationship is likely to have a little bit, perhaps more wisdom or experience. But I think the true relationship is a back and forth relationship. What about you, Garth?
I agree. I also think there's a recognition of permission too, a recognition of the relationship. You can't impose a mentorship on somebody else. And so when you enter into a mentorship relationship, as you said earlier, Jason, you have to, the mentee has to put things into that relationship, not just take things. So yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that.
Garth, when I think about it too, though, I think there's something about cadence and regularity that is required in mentor-mentee relationships. It's not one of these things where you can pick up a phone once a year and be connected. I think there's got to be, back to purpose mindset. There has to be purposeful actions on a regular basis that keep you connected with your partner or partners in this relationship. And I do think that's where you put in the capital on a regular basis. So when you really need that support in the moment, it's there for you and you've built that up. So again, the leadership challenge is right on point this week. And Barry, thanks for asking that question.
Yeah, and this past weekend we just had our second face-to-face with cohort 21, and we were doing in the leadership lab, we were doing some coaching pieces. And there is this notion that you can have a coaching session that is very formal. We're now going into a coaching session. Here are the parameters, et cetera. This is how long we have. But there's also an informal position to it, a positionality as well. So, I think this question is really important. So, Jason, I'll put it to you. I view you as a mentor, and you and I have had some conversations where I've specifically asked you for advice, right? But it's not like I view you as above me or something like that. I view this relationship as something that we invest in together. And we're just really fortunate. We have to get together once a week at least. So there's the frequency and all of those things. So, and the consistencies. All right, let's move on to it.
Yeah, no, before we move on to the next question, Garth, I think you've said something really important there. And I think when you build strong relationships, you can be very explicit on what you need out of the moment. So, Garth, when I need advice from you, I'll say, Garth, I just need your advice. Or you'll say, hey, Jason, give me some advice on this. Then there's the coaching moments, coach me through it. Or sometimes there's just an iteration and, creativity moment where we're, and I think being able to express the intent of the conversation, even though it feels a little bit robotic, off the top is helpful because the other partner knows what to give and what to take out of that conversation. So no, I think I just don't want that to be a throwaway item. It's just so bright, Garth, what you shared.
All right. Thanks, man. Okay, let's move on to another question. So this one is talking about navigating uncertainty with optimism. I think this really speaks to this notion of trust. So Ted Lasso faces numerous challenges with unwavering optimism. And in the book, How to Navigate Life, the authors address managing life's uncertainties. Jason, how can leaders maintain an positive outlook and guide their teams through uncertain times?
Well, I think there's at least two, there's several answers to this. The two that come to mind first is that I think you need to nurture yourself through joy and gratitude to maintain optimism. And, more often, the gratitude we give actually gives us joy. It's not the joy that makes us grateful. And so I think as a practice in leadership, if we nurture this practice of gratitude, I think it brings joy. And out of that joy comes optimism. So there's a little bit of upfront work or personal training that's required to be able to maintain a level of optimism. I think the second thing is, and I don't think this is the case all the time, but sometimes you have to be a little bit performative in leadership, frankly, because not everything is perfect all the time. But you know what? Everybody is watching the leader. And if they're watching the leader and the leader is not optimistic on balance, there's a time for realism, pessimism, no doubt. But if you're not optimistic on balance, your followers, your followership are going to pick up on that. And I think that does have a huge impact on organizational or team culture. And so sometimes, dare I say, I think it's a little bit performative to maintain this optimistic outlook. Now, as a leader, you have to watch yourself, though, because if you're performative all the time and you are truly deep down pessimistic about the situation, this is where mentorship or support comes in. And you've got to find a release or an outlet to be able to support yourself in an attempt to support others. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that answer. I'm going to pick up on one thread that's in there because I think in times of uncertainty, people are looking to leaders. And if you don't have trust, or in those moments of uncertainty, if you're inauthentic and break that trust, that's when things fall apart. But if you are moving through change or uncertainty, you have to, I think, build trust by saying, we are in this together. Here's roles that we all play. This isn't just up to me to get us through uncertain times. This is the role that we all play. And I think by building that connectivity, that collaboration, you build trust. And by build trust, you build a positive outlook. Like, we're going to get through this.
Man, I think that's on point, Garth. Well done. We got time, I think, for one more. Do you mind if I ask this
Go
one?
for it.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, so and I love this about the book. And so the book discusses the pressures of performance and the need for mental well-being. Now, when we layer this on to Ted Lasso also prioritizes teams' morale over performance metrics. You said that early in this podcast. What strategies can leaders employ to balance achieving high performance while ensuring the well-being of the team members? Dying to know your first thought there.
Well, I just love these last two questions. Bring us back to Ted Lasso.
Yeah, I do too.
First of all, yeah, I go back to this phrase of, are we challenging our teams enough, and are we providing enough support for those teams to meet those challenges? And I think that's a really critical balance that we have to strike here. This is the heart of leadership, is noticing your team, how they are doing, and not in a reactive way. You are doing all the future foresight work to make sure that the load is balanced, to make sure that people know what's coming up, because there are ebbs and flows to the school year. There's ebbs and flows to fiscal cycles. And so you can predict and you can put things in place to make sure that the team morale, the team well-being is shored up for when it's going to be tested. So that's one strategy. That's sort of looking into the future, making those strategic decisions based on what you know is coming, and then balancing that with observation, conversations around how are they doing, checking in. As a teacher, always looked at the state. This sounds funny saying, we always look at the state of the uniform, right? If kids aren't able to even, get the uniform correctly, that's an indication, right? And so I think it's noticing the little things about the performance of your team and how they're doing that can give you real insight into their well-being. And then you can plan ahead for that.
Garth. And I mean, last week I had the pleasure of teaching the Leadership Institute faculty culture. And every time I try to bring Hal Hannaford back, and Hal always says provocative things, but one of the things he says is teachers are the most important in a school organization. So, and it's a little bit problematic because students should be the most important thing. But what Hal is saying here is that as a leader, we need to take care of our teachers so that they can take care of their kids, right? So back to what you said about are we providing the resources and support for our teachers or our employees to do their best job? Because if you're in a business environment, I know we have a lot of business leaders listening out there, can you take care of your employees in a way that they can take care of the customers? And I think, to your point,
Yes.
Garth, looking out for the well-being of those people you are set to take care of is first and foremost if we're going to find high performance and achievement. So well done, my friend. Well done.
Yeah. All right. So I think that wraps this all up. So thanks for the questions, everybody. And just a reminder, submit your questions to lassoingleadership@gmail.com or through LinkedIn, Spotify, or Instagram, slip into our DMs, etc. Our next podcast will be on a new theme, and we're just firing through these, Jason. Tell us a little bit about what our third theme is.
So the next theme that we're moving into is humility and vulnerability. And I'm looking forward to that, Garth.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we'll be talking about is self-awareness, like recognizing the strengths and gifts that you have, but also recognize the strengths and gifts of others. So it's going to be great. And we've got one quick article for you. Matthew Lenig, he's a retired Navy SEAL officer, and he wrote a Forbes article. And he writes, regardless of stature or rank, everyone must show humility and be vulnerable. It lends itself to more benefits and wins than it does to failures. And I just think that article is great. So we'll link to it in our show notes so we can get our listeners ready for that.
And Garth, don't you always say something like the smartest person in the room?
Oh yeah. The smartest person in the room, I think, is the room. And so a leadership tool based in humility is build really great rooms. Get the right people in the right room. Recognizing the lived experiences and the wisdom of others, and making room for this to be heard and integrated into decision-making, management, other facets of leadership. It's so valuable.
All right. That's Humility and Vulnerability 101. And I can hardly wait to these episodes. We've got lots to look forward to. But for now, that's a wrap. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, tell your friends, get Jason Sudeikis on this show for us because we're still after it, Garth. I'm not letting up. We'll record these things until he comes on. But for now, Garth, why don't you take us home?
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Until next time, keep leading the Lasso way.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, all.
Step up to the mic. It's time to play. Lassoing leadership every day. From the pitch to the boardroom, lessons call to mind. Keep leading the lasso way. You'll find we've got heart, we've got soul, and humor too. Exploring how TED shows what leaders should do. With Garth and Jason, we dive right in, breaking down Ted's world. Let's begin from AFC, Richmond Spiel to your day-to-day. Lassoing leadership's here to stay. Keep leading the lasso way. Together we'll grow stronger every day. So plug in your headphones and let's start the show. With lessons from TED, we'll learn and grow.